We're, so we're ready? Yep. Okay, yep. Are we waiting for this? No, we're right. Okay. Welcome everybody. Welcome to the East Gippsland Shire Council's meeting of the 2nd of February 2021. East Gippsland Shire Council live streams, records and publishes its meetings via webcasting to enhance the accessibility of its meetings to the broader East Gippsland community. These recordings are also archived and available for viewing by the public or used for publicity or information purposes. At the appropriate times during the meeting, any members of the gallery who are addressing the council will have their image, comments or submissions recorded. No other person has the right to record council meetings unless approval has been granted by the chair. The Victorian Government has amended the COVID-19 Omnibus Emergency Measures and Other Acts Amendment Act 2020 that enables council meetings to be conducted by electronic means, video conferencing, until 26th of April 2021. The Minister for Local Government reissued the Ministerial Good Practice Guideline for virtual meetings on 20th of October 2020, outlining the provisions relating to the Local Government Act 2020, allow councillors to attend council meetings electronically, and the requirement where council meetings are open to the public will be satisfied where the meeting is live streamed. The amendments do not preclude councillors from attending a meeting in person in the council chambers. Members of the public are invited to view the council meeting live streamed by following the link on council's website or Facebook page. I would like to recognise the traditional custodians. East Gippsland Shire Council acknowledges the Gunai Kurnai, Monero and the Bidwell people as the traditional custodians of the land that encompasses East Gippsland Shire. We pay our respects to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people living in East Gippsland, their elders past and present. Item 1.2 on the agenda is for apologies. Mr CEO, do we have any apologies?
Mayor, we don't have any apologies, but I would like to make the point that in the agenda, it did indicate that Councillor White would be an apology. Not the whole agenda, would be an apology, but obviously he is with us now in the chamber, so the record will show that he is here and not an apology.
Thank you, Mr CEO. Item 1.3 on the agenda is declaration of conflict of interest. So I would ask if there are any declarations. Have you received any, Mr CEO?
None have been provided, Mayor.
Councillors, are there any conflicts? No, I see none. Item 1.4 is the confirmation of the minutes of the Tuesday the 15th of December 2020. Councillors, thank you, Councillor Reeves. You'd like to move that the minutes be accepted? Do I have a seconder?
Happy to second those.
Thank you, Councillor Crook. You don't want to speak to the motion? No, you don't want to speak to the motion, Councillor Crook. Would any councillor like to speak against the motion? No. I'd like to put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. The motion is carried unanimously. The next meeting of the East Gippsland Shire Council will be on Tuesday the 23rd of February 2021 to be held at the Corporate Centre, 273 Main Street, Bensdale, commencing at 6 p.m. Item 1.6, requests for leave of absence. Mr CEO, do we have any requests?
None have been received, Mayor.
Thank you. Item 1.7, requests to speak about your community project. Have we had any requests, Mr CEO?
No, we have not, Mayor.
Thank you. Item 1.8 is public question time. Mr CEO, do we have any questions?
Mayor, for the first time in a little while, we actually have 3 questions tonight. So I'm happy to read those out and refer them to the relevant officers if you're happy for me to proceed.
Thank you.
The first question is from Robin Lewington of Swan Reach. He states, or he asks, reference to my initial communication on 4th of December 2018, CRM 161160, regarding the existing 100 kilometres per hour on Nungurna Road, my concern is, will the existing 100 kilometres per hour speed limit be reduced on the Nungurna Road from the junction of Kalimna West Road through to the junction of the Swan Reach Meetung Roads? This section of Nungurna Road is almost continuous bends and there are many property entrances, including the junction of Rocherville Road. And I will ask our General Manager of Assets and Environment to provide some comments. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, which officers understand is of importance to the Nungurna community and which officers take very seriously from a road safety perspective. Perhaps confusingly, road speeds are set and considered by the state through the Department of Transport, even roads that are managed locally by council. Therefore, in terms of a speed reduction from 100 kilometres an hour to 80 kilometres an hour, this is considered by the Department of Transport to be a significant reduction and therefore has to follow a quite extensive review process, which council officers have commenced through the collection of the required data. The traffic data then goes through a special program which determines the most appropriate speed reduction for this section of road. Once this assessment is undertaken, officers then document the traffic history and crash history and seek community views on the reduction through both direct mail outs to residents in the area and through the use of local media and local advertising. Once all this information is collected, it's then presented to the Department of Transport locally, who assess it before then forwarding it to the Department's traffic engineers in Melbourne, where it's finally determined. As you can see, it's quite an extensive process and the current time frames between the beginning of the application to conclusion is approximately 12 months. This particular review has also been slowed down slightly as officers from both our own area and the Department of Transport focused on road recovery from the Black Summer fires. However, we understand the residents' concerns and remain committed to progressing our parts of the review as soon as possible. A response along these lines will also be presented to Mr Lewington.
Mayor, the second question is from Ms Shane Boyd of Marlow. The question reads, why did the East Gippsland Shire Council pass Amendment C80 in 2012 to create a development plan overlay on the 10 Marlow Road site, which effectively disenfranchises the Marlow community from objection and review through VCAT and allows a subdivision plan which ignores the intent and strategic objectives of the Marlow Urban Design Framework 2007 and the articulated vision for Marlow established in that policy document, which was designed to guide development in the following 15 to 20 years. Mayor, what I would just say before I pass to Nicole is that I really don't want us to comment on why Council would have made a decision back in 2012. It would have been based on the report of officers and the information before them on the time, but I certainly don't want to second guess what the overall discussion may have been at that point in time. But I will ask Nicole just to provide some background, a couple of background points that, that may be of assistance.
Thank you, Mr CEO. Planning Scheme Amendment C80 was approved at the Council meeting in December 2011. This was following a process which was executed in accordance with the Planning and Environment Act 1987, which included the public exhibition process. The effect of the final decision in relation to the land was to rezone the land from the farming zone to the residential 1 zone and applied the development plan overlay with a new schedule number 7 and applied the design and development overlay schedule 11. the design and development overlay applies to this land in question and includes the urban design framework relating to Marlow as a background document.
Thank you. Mayor, the third and final question is from Mr. Peter Foden of Marlow. His question reads, why did East Gippsland Shire Council planning officers ignore the written objections and submissions of Marlow residents relating to the lack of adherence to the Marlow Urban Design Framework 2007? These submissions were lodged in February 2017, early enough for the Shire planners to request the developer to modify the development plan subdivision to reflect community views. I'll ask Ms Reynolds to answer that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. CEO, and thank you for the question. The key matters which form part of the Marlow Urban Design Framework have been considered as part of the assessment and consideration of the development plan overlay request as forming part of the East Gippsland Planning Scheme planning provisions. Issues such as urban character, the natural environment, public area improvements, the management of traffic flow and improved safety, together with pedestrian circulation, stormwater drainage and bushfire risk have been considered as part of the ongoing assessment of the proposal.
Thank you, Ms Reynolds. Mayor, that's all the questions we have. They will be included in the minutes, and there will also be a response sent to those people that have written in. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. CEO, and thank you, officers. Item 1.9 on the agenda is for petitions. Have we received any petitions, Mr. CEO?
There are none, Mayor.
Thank you. Item 2 is for notices of motion and rescission, and I believe we don't have any. Item 3 is for deferred business, and once again, we don't have any deferred business. Item number 4 is for councillor and delegate reports. So I will hand over to you, councillors, around the table. Maybe we'll go around. Councillor Reeves, would you like to offer your
Thanks,
report?
Mayor. Thanks, councillors. I've submitted reports along the lines of our meeting with Minister Mary Ann Thomas, the Minister for Regional Development and Agriculture, on the 14th of the 1st, the official opening of Mallacoota Police Station on the same day, and Minister Lisa Neville attended that. And I've submitted a report around the Australia Day Awards at Sarsfield. And I'd just like to draw your attention in particular to our Australia Day Shire recipient, Leo Optenbrow, and what a wonderful recipient and a great person Leo is, and a very worthy recipient, and a great shout out for Leo and the work that he has done for decades at Mallacoota, and including recently his work around the sanctuary for young people after the fires. And also I've just noted the Australia Day Orbost Rotary Club and the work that they did on Australia Day at Forest Park. Thanks, Mayor. Those reports have been submitted and are available should people want to read them.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. Councillor Stowe, do you have a report?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Arthur Allen and I attended Neighbourhood House leading up to Christmas in Hoddinott Street, and we were pretty impressed with what they were doing around there. They weren't too happy council have reduced their funding from $2,000 down to $1,000, so that's perhaps something we could look at later. But they provide a great service to the people of Eastern Bairnsdale, and we should keep that in mind in the future. A week or so ago, I attended a meeting about the South Bairnsdale Industrial Estate, and as councillors would remember, there's a water issue there, a large water issue that's been going on for some years. 3 representatives from the estate, together with Stuart, Steve and myself, attended. The representatives filled us in with the history of the estate and a proposal of some ways forward, including a special rate over a number of years. They feel that our estimate of costs may be way too low. This is going to be a very important issue to resolve and a very difficult issue to resolve. And finally, I attended the Linda No Australia Day celebrations and the awards out there, which was terrific. Enjoyed it.
Thanks, Councillor Stowe. Councillor Crook?
Nothing to report at this time, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Greeson?
A couple of things. I attended the Australia Day Awards on the 21st of January at Sarsfield and enjoyed the awards ceremony very much, and it was great to see people out there at the Oval, and the recipients just all look like fantastic people. I also opened the East Gippsland Art Gallery's Art Textile Biennale 2020 on the 22nd of January, and this is very special because it's, I think the arts and culture industry was hit very hard by COVID, so it's really excellent to see, you know, our local gallery hosting this this international art textile prize award, exhibition, and it featured artworks by 29 artists from 16 different countries, and was the work of Glenys Mann and Noni Sutcliffe. So that was pretty special. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Greeson. Councillor White.
I can actually offer nothing, but I would offer my thanks to Councillor Stowe, who at very short notice stood in for me at a ceremony I just love to go to every year at Lindenow, sponsored by the Bowling Club and supported by the whole community, our Australia Day breakfast, and I do apologise to those people that I could not attend, and I thank you again for filling in for me. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor White. Councillor Allen.
On December the 30th, along with Councillor Buckley, I attended at the Omeo Recreation Reserve for an inspection of the facilities, and we met with Darcy Fitzgerald, Lee Fulton and Graham Simons, and I was absolutely amazed to be shown a 6-stand shearing display, setup.
Just a stadium like an old, beautiful building.
Which forms the basis of their shearing school that they're about to establish, and to take the training for a rural industry to a rural area, I believe is absolutely great. Part of the inspection, we inspected what used to be the old kindergarten building, which will form the classroom part of this training school. I believe it's a Shire-owned facility, but it is in need of work to bring it up to a habitable standard. But I think it's something that we should be proud of, that this is happening in Omeo. It was really great. We also inspected the netball courts, which are deteriorating quite badly because of stormwater runoff from the adjacent car park. I think that as a matter of urgency, we need to come up with a coordinated drainage plan, including curb and channel, to divert the water away so that big community asset is not lost to us. And the third part of their tour was to show us their gym area in the loft of the social room change room, and to express their desire to be able to add natural light to that area through the provision of a couple of windows and some discrete lock-up areas for the various groups that use it. But it was an amazing day, and my thanks to those three gentlemen for their time, and for Sonia for accompanying me. Of course, everyone knows that just on New Year there was a COVID scare in Lakes, which didn't close the town down, but it cleaned the town out for a couple of days. But I would like to thank Peter Carazano for his work that he did while he was filling in for Anthony. I sent him an email at 6:05 on a Sunday morning and received a response by 6:25, and that continued for 2 or 3 days. He arranged meetings on very short notice, and I think it was very much appreciated by those that were affected. So I give you my thanks, Peter. On the 20th of January, Councillor Reeves and myself attended a meeting with the Marlow Ratepayers Association, and once again I'm very grateful that Mark was there with his great knowledge of the history of the subdivision out there. And after the meeting, along with two of the Ratepayers Association reps, we went for a tour of Marlow and found places I never knew existed. So thank you for that, Mark.
That's right, Arthur. That took several hours, that tour, such is the substance of Marlow.
It was good. Australia Day, I attended both Lakes Entrance and Johnsonville representing the Shire, and I congratulate Bruce Hurley for Citizen of the Year in Lakes Entrance, and Klaus Dogger, who was recognised as Citizen of the Year at Johnsonville, and there was a special award at Johnsonville too to the members of the CFA, not only for their work during the bushfires and the subsequent recovery, but forever. They were a very, very appreciated part of that community. The last bit that I would like to report on is that the Slipway Collective at Lakes opened between Christmas and New Year and added something very, very good for the town, as not only the pop-up food stalls, but the float part of the collective provided an alternative for people who don't want to go to the beach, don't want to go fishing or swimming. They provided a great alternative to them, and it's something that I look forward to continuing into the future. And I think it's a great opportunity for us as a Shire now to prove that we are a can-do Shire and to bring it to fulfilment of its promise. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Councillor Van der Gel.
That was a lot. I attended the Australia Day Awards as well, so obviously it was really nice to see that people in our community were recognised, and for me too, I felt quite proud of the Young Citizen of the Year, James Bush, who I've worked with really closely in the last 6 years, so it was quite a proud moment and really happy to be there. And also just kudos to Sarsfield Recreation Reserve, because that was very well organised and just a really great event. Then I also attended the Australia Day ceremony in Paynesville, and I was able to present as a councillor, but they also asked me to talk about what it means for me to be Australian, and that was quite powerful for me, given that I moved to Australia when I was 7. So that was really nice, and seeing, I guess, my local community and having a chance to really meet them, that was really nice. And I actually also attended the East Gippsland Study Hub last week. I organised a meeting with them, because I know it's a partnership between the East Gippsland Shire Council, TAFE, Gippsland Federation Uni, and the Gippsland Len. Is that right? Is there any other partners I've missed? I'm not sure. Yeah. So for me, obviously being a young person who commuted 4 hours each way to get to university every single week, I'm really passionate about that, and it's been funded for a little while, but unfortunately wasn't able to be utilised due to COVID. So I went and had a look just to see how potentially in the future we could support that, and just check out the space, and obviously try to refer young people to that, to know that they don't have to leave our region to get their university education. So that was really great. That's all I've got to report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Van der Gel. Pardon me. Councillor Buckley.
Thank you. Well, firstly, we'll get the Australia Day out of the way. What a cracking time we had up in the bush. We had the former Deputy Mayor get up and do a rendition of a banjo, I think it was a Banjo Patterson poem, and he was very warmly received, and we had a couple of First Nation children helped me present the awards. They were really charismatic, and I look forward to getting them back next year. We've already had a discussion about writing a song together, which they'll sing. Now, for the recipients, we had Graham Simons, who was the CFA captain, and he's just a champion of local issues. So it was wonderful for him to get up and receive his award. We had Maureen Webb, who is, she's in a wheelchair, but she is one of the most incredible mentors in our region. She has mentored me over the years and many others, and she's just an incredible worker, so she was very deserving of the Citizen of the Year award. And then we had Carolyn Ferris, who's the Young Citizen of the Year Award of the Year, and she's a deaf girl who has I suppose you'd almost call it dons of the class. She's just an incredible young woman who has topped all of her other students in her class, and also comes from a very smart family, and it was really good to meet her, and we had a great time. I sung a cappella the national anthem and got everyone else to sing along with me, and I'm really worried that I'm going to be labelled the singing councillor. So that was the Australia Day. Look, I have been doing a lot of other work, which too much in detail to express today to you all, but I have got some favourites, which is obviously working with local government to work in hand with parks and ADELP in regards to looking at the proposal for the boat ramp at the Dartmouth Dam, and also I've been working with Councillor Allen to lobby for the sealing of the Corryong Road. So I look forward to bringing more information as we go on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. People have been busy. I hope everyone's had a nice rest too over the summer period, and that includes council staff after their year last year, but also councillors as well. For some people, the milder summer has been a bit of a relief with not too much concern about bushfires, so I hope our local residents have enjoyed that, even though maybe for our camping visitors they mightn't have been quite so thrilled. Just a few things that I've been involved in. Deputy Mayor Councillor Reeves has said that we had some ministerial visits on the 14th of January, so I won't go over that, but we did have an enjoyable visit to Malakuta, I have to say, and just to sit down with the wonderful people working in the hub there around the Madra, Bushfire Recovery Victoria, and the various people there who work so hard to support the recovery after the devastating bushfires. It was really wonderful just to spend a couple of hours with them and listening about their work. I also attended Australia Day event and found that council celebrations on the 21st of January were really enjoyable and wonderful, so congratulations also to the council staff who helped to organise that. It was a great day. The community event I attended on the 26th of January was the one in Bensdale, and that was hosted by the Classic Car Club. Mr Max Curtis was the winner of the Citizen of the Year there, very well-deserved recognition for him. With a couple of other councillors and the CEO and council staff, we visited the Twin Rivers people on the 22nd of January and heard a little bit about their progress and what they want to do next with regards to their community plan and the upgrade of the hall there. They do fabulous work, as I think you mentioned, Councillor Allen. A couple of the subcommittees I'm involved with, one is the East Gippsland Recovery Committee, and that met recently on the 28th of January. It was a virtual meeting. Mr CEO chairs that committee. It was a review of the work that's been done to date, and it was a great discussion about what's been achieved and where to next. So that's been a very active committee, I gather, right through the bushfires, and oversees a lot of work done by different agencies. So it's a really interesting committee to be part of. And finally, I represent, of course, this Shire on the One Gippsland group of councils, and we had an advocacy meeting, which was a virtual meeting with the Honourable Mark Colton and the Honourable Darren Chester on the 29th of January, and that was around Gippsland's digital connectivity issues. So I think that will be the first of hopefully a series of advocacy meetings at different levels. So thank you, some great reports there. I'd like to move on to item 5 on the agenda, and item 5.1.1 is the endorsement of the Gippsland Tracks and Trails Feasibility Study and Gippsland Trail Feasibility Study. and the General Manager of Bushfire Recovery, Mr Stuart McConnell, is going to introduce this item. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Mayor. This first officer's report for this evening relates to the presentation of two reports that have been developed across Gippsland by the 6 councils.
I do apologise, Mr McConnell. I should have remembered we have a speaker on this item. Can I just ask you to, sorry to interrupt, and I think our speaker might be, well, he will be attending virtually, hopefully on the end of the line here. Okay, thank you. Hello, Mr. Rotino, can you hear us? Mm-hmm. Terrific. Hello, Joe, are you there? Ah, great, we can see you as well. Welcome, Joe. Can you hear us?
Yeah, sorry, I was having a few technical issues, but I can hear you now.
No worries. Welcome to our former Mayor and former Councillor, Joe Rotino. It's great to have you here, Joe, and you wanted to speak on this item, the Gippsland Tracks and Trails and Gippsland Trail Feasibility Study.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, Madam Mayor, councillors and officers. Thanks for allowing me to speak on this item tonight. I've always had a strong passion and many years' experience for regional economic development. Recently, I formalised this experience by obtaining an MBA at Fed Uni. But my reason and desire to speak tonight are as follows. The Gippsland Tracks and Trails report, presented in item 5.1.1, presents a significant opportunity for East Gippsland to maximise its fair share of the regional visitor economy and create critically needed sustainable jobs. I believe the East Gippsland Shire Council could suffer an opportunity loss by not having a stronger action-orientated recommendation in item 5.1.1. And I say this because experiential tourism is growing at double-digit growth. No other sector in our economy is growing like that. Regional tourism is experiencing a boom due to COVID-19 travel restrictions, where people having a desire to travel can't at the moment, but coupled with the Victorian Government's multi-million Stay Close, Go Further campaign, this presents a significant opportunity for regional Victoria. I think the recommendation strategy should be two-pronged to maximise and fast-track current experiential tourism projects and seek government grants to finalise shovel-ready projects in the pipeline. Examples like maximising the Omeo mountain bike trails network and make a proper financial commitment to the East Gippsland Rail Trail. The evidence and research that I've reviewed over the last few years probably came together in a report that was done in The Australian on July 22nd, 2017. The article was based on the following projects: Mona, the Museum of Old and New Art in Hobart, the Royal Mail Hotel, Dunkeld, Victoria, and the project was a good feed. Blue Derby Destination Mountain Bike Trails, Derby, Tasmania, the big idea. Interestingly, Derby's population of 150 once ticked all the boxes. Contributes in excess of $30 million to the Tasmania's visitor economy. The Bendigo Art Gallery, and that project was the big thinker, and McLaren Vale, South Australia, the Glass Cube. Jeremy Thorpe was asked to comment on this particular experiential tourism economic driver. Jeremy is the Chief Economist at accounting firm PwC. He says in 2017, this experiential tourism visitor economy model is the future if regional cities and towns are to thrive. The big trend in consumption is a drive towards experiential spending rather than buying assets. He says spending on leisure, experiential tourism and entertainment rose by 26% from 2009 to 2016, while the growth on spending on goods such as clothes, appliances and furniture was only growing at 4% back in 2017. Many young people believe housing is unaffordable and foregoing other big purchases such as cars in favour of Uber, but they are prepared to spend big on experiences. Retirees too are cashed up and looking for adventure. His comments are, in the future, I don't think you can look at a region and say making things is the way to attract people and industry. Thorpe says if you're in reasonable proximity to a metropolitan area, you need to be thinking what things are going to attract people. You need a unique experience. The key is an anchor institution. He says, be it a great art gallery, a vineyard or an outstanding restaurant, linked to the natural environment and regional produce. People want an experience they can't get in the city. The impact of creating a strategic action in tonight's item is support of 5.1.1 will create an enabling local government process to fast-track experiential tourism opportunities, thus resulting in smart specialisation, which is code for stakeholder engagement involving community, industry, government and education learning training. Leveraging in a sustainable way East Gippsland's natural icon assets and experiential attractions. It will be an economic stimulus and create sustainable jobs. Thanks again for your time, and the community will watch with interest the debate on item 5.1.1 and the final motion there being adopted. There's never been a better time than right now to invest in the future of East Gippsland. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. The voice of experience talking there. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to now hand over to Mr McConnell.
Thank you, Mayor. And I might just also note that Stephen Kleinitz from our economic development team's also online if there's a need for any questions or similar. But again, this item relates to the presentation of two reports, a feasibility study on the Gippsland tracks and trails more generally, and also the Gippsland Trail feasibility study. The Gippsland Tracks and Trails feasibility study provides an assessment of trails across Gippsland and makes recommendations on opportunities for improving the current trail-based experiences, and importantly those experiences are both for locals in terms of exercise opportunities and similar, and for visitors, and it becomes, as part of the broader nature-based offering, a really important part of what we offer in East Gippsland. I just would particularly note in relation to the Tracks and Trails feasibility study, it identifies a number of key or signature walks and opportunities, and a number of those the work is already underway on. So one of those, for example, the Omeo mountain bike trail is one where the work is in a sense in progress, and Councillor has sought again additional funding in relation to that project, as we have in relation to some extensions in relation to or connected to the rail trail. And so there is a continuing body of work to put in place some of the things that are outlined within that feasibility study, which is really important. And I also just note some of the opportunities there in the public land estate around the Wilderness Coast Walk and the Sea to Summit Walk, and both of those again are those signature opportunities that can attract visitors to the region, and some of the early feasibility work is underway in relation to the Sea to Summit Walk currently, so that's really important. I also just acknowledge that some of the funding that's been recently announced by the Victorian Government in relation to the Snowy Trestle Bridge, and I think $3.5 million was allocated to that, which again is a sign of commitment to this area of work in East Gippsland. In relation to the Gippsland Trail feasibility study, there were several projects identified in the other report that required some initial work, and this was one of those, and this is about a connected series of trails that runs right across Gippsland. Part of that is in East Gippsland, and that presents a really exciting opportunity. Our view is there's a need for us to do some more work before we're ready to endorse the feasibility, just to make sure that we've got the costs and the understanding associated with that right. And in the meantime, we can continue to focus on the things that are already in front of us, such as completing the work at Omeo Mountain Bike. So with that, I just draw your attention to the recommendations in front of you to endorse the Gippsland Tracks and Trails feasibility study, and to note that officers will continue to do some work in relation to the Gippsland Trail feasibility study. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr McConnell. Councillors, are there any questions of Mr McConnell? If not, there is a recommendation in front of you on page 9 of your notes. Do I have a motion? Councillor Allen, thank you. You'd like to?
I'd move that we accept the officer's recommendations.
Great,
Yes.
thank you. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Lots of people, but I think Councillor Crook, you would be the seconder. Councillor, is the motion opposed? No. Councillor Allen, would you like to speak to the motion?
I think this is a great asset that we've got in our region, and we need to develop it and maximise the opportunities that it brings. And I think it'll be a major positive thing for our region.
Fantastic. Thank you. Councillor Crook, would you like to speak to the motion?
Oh, certainly, yes. Just look, resounding support for this body of work. It's clear that tourism generally and ecotourism specifically presents some fantastic opportunities for our regional economy into the future, and I look forward to being a part of seeing those developed.
Fantastic, thank you. I tricked you before, went out of order. Would any councillor like to speak against the motion? No. Would anybody else like to speak for the motion? Yes, Councillor Van de Gel.
Sorry, Stuart, I should have done it earlier, but what's the timeline on this?
So the feasibility study, in a sense, so that work is in front of you, and that's completed, and our focus at the moment then goes to progressing each of those projects, and each of those projects will have different timelines.
Okay.
And obviously the one that's in front of us is the Omeo Mountain Bike project. That's probably the one that's currently being worked on. There are a number of others where we've got grant applications in train around those. But again, what this does is sets out a body of work and a body of opportunities that runs, really for, the next 5-10 years, that sort of period of time that would see us through, development of some really key opportunities.
Great. Yeah, I think it's fantastic. I think ecotourism, but I also often look for a holiday that I can go somewhere with a lot of bike riding, so it'd be great to have it in our own region.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak for the motion? Yes, Councillor Reeves.
Well, thanks, Mayor and councillors. This was an important report, and it goes to the heart of the rapidly changing nature of tourism, especially in a post-COVID-19 world where Victorians and Australians are looking inward for their holiday and their leisure now. And Joe spoke really eloquently about the benefits, the experiential nature of tourism now. And people want to do tourism rather than have it done to them. And that's really the nature of the mountain bike riding and trail riding. The report, the feasibility study, talks to the benefit cost analysis of anything between 1.7 and 2.2. So it's really significant, the investment compared to the return, if you look at a dollar sense. But then if you look at a community health and wellbeing benefit as well, having people active, and with the advent now of e-bikes, it means that older people like myself can actually, and Councillor Allen is waving over there, can actually ride rail trails for significant different distances. But also, what is really noticeable now is that these feasibility studies are even out of date compared to the investment that is happening already. And we've seen that, as has been noted by the officers, around the Orbost Trestle Bridge investment, and more recently the Marlow to Cape Conran trail that is going to take place. $7.5 million around some other infrastructure as well. And of course, what that means is there is now a missing link, and that's the link between Marlow and Orbost. And so we just have to have that dream and be able to close our eyes and think that visitors could come to Traralgon and ride over days and have a destination at Cape Conran and have a variety of accommodation products along the way and have that destination at Cape Conran. It's really exciting, and it's when we have that dream we can have the reality. So keep having the dream, councillors, and we need to make sure that our officers can prosecute this. And every time we get a well-funded federal or state minister in the chamber, we should remind them of the opportunities that we have a vision for.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. Would anyone else like to speak for the motion? No? Perhaps I'll just say, I just really appreciate the work that's already been done by previous councils regarding the trails. It's a framework that's already been done. There are some key bits of infrastructure that are already in place. So I'm just really appreciating that this work comes along at a time when we might have future opportunities to get funding, and we can build on what's already there. And I think what the bushfires and COVID have taught us, many things really, but to have projects where the planning has already been done and that are almost ready to go, preferably further along the track than this, but it's really beneficial to have that planning already started. So with that, I'd like to put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. The motion is carried unanimously. Joe, thanks for attending and speaking, and Stephen, thanks also for being there. I know you've been there probably listening as well. So thank you both. Okay. Councillors, item 5.1.2 on the agenda is the amendment C158 EGIP to the East Gippsland Planning Scheme, Stockman Base Metals Project, correction to the incorporated document. And I will hand you over to the General Manager of Place and Community, and tonight I think that's Mr McPherson. Is that right?
Yes, it is.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, before you this evening is a report seeking your endorsement to request the Minister of Planning exercise his powers to intervene and approve a planning scheme amendment C158 EGIP to the East Gippsland Planning Scheme in accordance with the documentation attached to the report as a prescribed class of planning scheme amendment. The key points from the report for Council to consider are that the Stockman Base Metals Project Brunambra has been through an extensive environmental effects statement approvals process, including both Victorian and Commonwealth Government approvals. Part of the approvals includes the provisions in the East Gippsland Planning Scheme in the form of an incorporated document. The incorporated document requires a series of plans which require the responsible authority approval, being Council. One of the plans relates to a Section 173 legal agreement addressing road maintenance for the project. The planning scheme amendment is required to make a correction by deleting a reference to the Planning and Environment Act and to simply reflect that an agreement to Council's satisfaction. The planning scheme amendment has been prepared as a prescribed amendment, which means that exhibition and notification will not be required. Officers have in principle support from the Regional Office of DELP on behalf of the Minister for Planning and a letter of support from the project proponent supporting this approach. The obligations or requirements of the incorporated documentation remain unchanged. Also present with me this evening is Nicole Reynolds, Acting Manager of Planning. The report is presented for your considerations, Mayor, and we're happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr McPherson. Councillors, are there any questions? Councillor Buckley? No?
Yes, but Mark had his hand up first.
Oh, beg your pardon?
Thanks, Mayor.
Reid.
Thanks, Mr McPherson. My question is, so I've read the report and it's quite substantial and detailed, and my understanding is it's a very big and detailed report making a very small and minor change that's procedural, which is around a legal agreement, or the wording around a legal agreement for maintenance of a road. It's really, that's the substance of it. Is that correct?
Thank you for your question, Councillor. As I'll refer to Ms Reynolds.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves, for your question. Yes, it is technical and procedural.
Thanks for you. That was a great question, Councillor Reeves. Thank you. Councillor Buckley.
I just want to also make an inquiry into regards to this particular document. I did speak to the CEO and Manager Jodie Pitkin about making some inquiries into this particular document about the Benambra bore, which is still incorporated in the Stockman's Base Metals Project incorporated document. And I feel apprehensive on putting my vote to this until I've had some questions answered around the proposal that they have, which in their documentation they state that there is no longer they don't have any plans to use that particular bore. Now, I know that this particular vote is about a road, but it is still about the actual, the incorporated document. So my rationale is that because we've had a lot of community objections to, for water to be drawn out of the aquifer, and because the proponent clearly says they don't want to use the bore, should it still be in this particular plan? And should we think about adjourning this particular item until we've made some further inquiries into that part of this plan?
Thank you for your question, Councillor Buckley. Nicole, did you want to respond on that one?
Thank you, Councillor Buckley, for your question. My understanding of your question is in relation specifically to the ongoing obligations with respect to the requirements in the incorporated document with respect to the bore. Just by way of background, just to let you know that we also have requested that Round Oak Minerals have agreed to provide Council with a background and an update to the project, and we're foreshadowing a briefing session for Council to bring you up to date with and provide a background. In the interim, we will also circulate a previous background briefing that Round Oak Minerals were able to provide to a previous Council to give you some background, just as part of the introduction to the project. With respect to the question of water supply, the environmental effects statement process, my understanding, which was subject to an inquiry advisory committee, consisted and considered the issue of water supply as part of the inquiry process. As part of that assessment process, I understand that the issue around the Benambra Valley was considered and a number of options were investigated. This included impacts on the current users, and which were modelled and demonstrated, and it was demonstrated there was no adverse impact on the current users. So we understand that a detailed process of investigation and assessment with respect to the water table was undertaken. So essentially with your questions, I'm not able to confirm at this stage whether the bore fields will be required. So the answer directly to your question is that our recommendation is that it remain as an option within the incorporated plan, of which there are current requirements with respect to details and plans to be provided. Essentially, as Councillor Rees asked, this is a technical issue to correct with reference to the section 173 relating to the traffic management. At this stage, the recommendation is to proceed with that technical correction, but taking your question on notice essentially as to whether the bore fields will be pursued or not, as it was subject to a further briefing.
Goodness me. Okay, thank you. Look, what I just do want to confer to a document of the Upper Midamidda River Catchment Action Plan, and it clearly states that there is a lot of community opposition to water extraction around groundwater extraction bores. Now, this is it's available in this document. I'm happy to give that to you because what you've said does not reflect the community sentiment in the agricultural sector, and I want that to be clearly noted, and that for the other councillors in the future, for us to be able to have some robust discussion about whether this should still be incorporated in their planning document. They've said they don't necessarily need to use it. So why should it be there? That's my view on it. So I shall take the fact that you're taking the question on notice and that it'll be brought back to council for review. Is that correct?
Thank you, Councillor Buckley.
Right,
Yes,
thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. Are there any further questions, councillors? If not, there is a recommendation in front of you on page 212 of the notes. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Councillor Reeves. Do I have a seconder? No seconder? Thank you, Councillor Stowe. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Reeves?
Oh, thanks, Mayor and Councillors. This here really is a technical modification, so it bears no reference to any commitment on behalf of the proponent to whatever they're doing. It is simply a technical modification, councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Stowe.
Yes, as Councillor Mark said, purely technical, no-brainer.
Right, thank you. Would any councillor like to speak against the motion? Councillor Buckley.
Although it's a technical matter, and I understand the differentiation, I still feel that I can't support the motion, knowing that there are elements of the plan that directly affect my community. So that's my view on it, and I think that they should come to the forefront immediately and quickly so that they can be resolved.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. Would anybody else like to speak for the motion or against the motion? If not, I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? 1, 2, clearly, yeah, thank you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 4. All those against? 1, 2, 3, 4 against. And Councillor Greason abstaining? Okay, then I will have the casting vote. Is that correct, Mr. CEO? Then I will use my casting vote to support the motion. So the motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. Item 5.1.3 on the agenda is the motion to support international campaign to abolish nuclear weapons cities appeal 2021. And again, I'm going to pass over to Mr. Sam McPherson, the acting GM of Place and Community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, before you this evening is a report seeking your endorsement to write to the Prime Minister of Australia, the Honourable Scott Morrison MP, expressing East Gippsland Shire Council's strong support for the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. The key points for the report before you this evening to consider, the Council has been invited by the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons to join 31 other Australian councils to express its support for the UN Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons by writing to the Australian Federal Government, as Australia is currently not a signatory to the treaty. The treaty entered into force on the 22nd of January this year and essentially has made the banning of nuclear weapons under international law. The report is presented, and attachments are presented for your consideration, Mayor, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. McPherson. Councillors, are there any questions? No questions. Then there is a recommendation in front of you on page 238. Do I have a motion?
Yes, I'm happy to move that recommendation, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Crook. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Greason. Councillor Crook, would you like to speak to the motion?
Briefly, Madam Mayor, certainly. Clearly, this forum has very little influence over the use or production of nuclear weapons, but Australia does, however, play a role in the nuclear fuel cycle, and as most people would be aware, nuclear weapons as a thing and their previous use around the world have brought untold misery to communities around the world. So I feel this is a vote on conscience as much as anything, and one that speaks to our commitment to civil society in the pursuit of democratic means to resolve our issues rather than indiscriminate destruction and force.
Thank you, Councillor Crook. Councillor Greason, would you like to speak to the motion?
I really have very little to add to what Councillor Crook has said, except that I think it's very important that we support this treaty. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Greason. Is the motion opposed? Would anyone like to speak against the motion? Councillor Allen.
I don't dispute anything that Tom or Jane have said, but I think we need to be aware of what we are responsible for and what we're not. This is a federal issue. I believe that it's our federal member that should be taking this forward, and I think it comes down to virtue signalling, to put it in pretty crude terms.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Would anyone else like to speak for the motion, firstly? Councillor Reeves.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Look, I know that some councillors, you may feel that our remit is rates, road and rubbish, but sometimes I think we've got to elevate our moral standing and represent the views of our community as well. I spent a lot of time with young people, even old people, and nobody said to me, you know what we need? A really good intercontinental ballistic missile in the Shire. Nobody's ever said that. You know, really, I think that we have an opportunity here through not much effort at all, to actually say to the Prime Minister, you know what, there's a bunch of people who don't think these are a good idea. And, you know, I think that we have a moral imperative to do that. Not much effort to do that, councillors. Nuclear weapons leave a much bigger pothole than cars.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. Would anyone like to speak against the motion? Councillor Stowe.
As far as I'm concerned, this is just feel-good stuff. It's an absolute waste of time. It's got nothing whatsoever to do with this council. No one's going to take any notice of anything we say, and we'd be better off spending our time addressing issues where we can make a difference.
Thank you, Councillor Stowe. Would anyone else like to speak for the motion or against the motion? Thank you, Councillor White.
I would just like to actually echo Councillor Stowe's words in that, you know, we really, this is not an issue for East Gippsland. This is an issue for our government and the world governments and the United Nations. This is not an issue for you know, East Gippsland. Like, it's just not going to mean a thing at a higher level. So I would oppose it.
Thank you, Councillor White. Councillor Crook, would you like to have the right of reply?
Oh, certainly. I understand, as I previously stated, that our voting on this issue or representation to the Prime Minister may not have any great bearing on what India, China and the US do with their nuclear arms. But it is a critically important issue for the global community of which East Gippsland is a part. Scott Morrison was elected to represent the whole of Australia. We're a part of that whole of Australia. We were elected to represent our community. Our communities are a part of that whole. So I feel we are merely doing the bidding of our electorate in electing us, in making representation on this issue to the Prime Minister, who then makes representation on behalf of our nation to the Council of Global Governance, the UN.
Thank you, Councillor Crook. I will now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4. Against? 1, 2, 3, 4. Councillor Buckley, abstaining. Then I get to use my casting vote once again, and I will use my vote to support the motion. So the motion is carried. Thank you, Councillor. So we'll move on to item 5.2 on the agenda. 5.2.1 is the Capital Works and Major Projects Quarter 2 2021 report, and I'll refer to the General Manager of Assets and Environment. Ms Weigel, please.
Thank you, Mayor. As you've stated, the report before you provides the current status of the capital works and major projects at the end of the second quarter, so to the end of December 2020. Councillors would be aware that this is one of the regular reports you receive on a quarterly basis and provides a more detailed overview of the status of our capital works program and our major projects. Points of interest in this particular report include that the budget has been revised to $58.83 million this financial year. As at the end of December, the spend was $14.18 million and we had committed another $18.06 million. Collectively, this represents 54.8% of the revised budget. During the quarter, 9 projects were completed and 5 projects was responded from the Quick Response Fund in response to requests from the community and small but urgent works. During the quarter, there were also 11 contracts awarded under CEO delegation. There are 2 attachments that are presented with this report. One documents the transactions within what we call the holding account, which is how we manage projects that may have an underspend and those that have an overspend, to make sure that there's full transparency in the way these projects are managed and reported. As at the end of the quarter, this holding account had a balance of $1.887 million. The second attachment provides a status of all projects that are currently in delivery and within the program. This shows that 19% of the projects are complete, 69% of the projects are on schedule, 2% are postponed, 6% are running late, and 4% are what we call cancelled. Where we have indicated they are cancelled, in reality this means the project budget has been rolled into a larger budget. So we may have had 2 or 3 small budgets for one project, and we've rolled them forward into one project budget for the entire project, which aids the ease of managing the project. Council has a recommendation in front of them, and I'm happy to answer any further questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Weigel. Councillors, are there any questions? Quite a big report. No questions of Ms Weigel. Otherwise, there is a recommendation for a motion in front of you on page 245 of the report of our notes. Do I have a motion? Please.
Sure.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. Do I have a seconder?
Yes, happy to second that.
Councillor Allen. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Reeves?
No, thank you. That's a very detailed report and it looks like business as usual, plus a bit more.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Allen?
Just to support what Mark said, it's a very comprehensive report.
Yep, terrific. Thank you. Would anybody like to speak against the motion? No. Would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? No. I shall put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. The motion is carried unanimously. Item 5.3 on the agenda is the Customer Experience Survey, strategy. And I will pass over to the... Oh, have I missed something? Oh, I did miss one. Sorry. Okay, thank you. Item 5.3.1 is the sale of land at 286 Marine Parade Lakes Entrance, and I'll hand over to the General Manager of Business Excellence, Mr Cannizzaro, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, before you is a report titled Sale of Land at 286 Marine Parade Lakes Entrance, which is seeking to determine that the road reserve that abuts the property at 286 Parade Lakes Entrance is not required for public access or any future public use, and that Council owned us sell the land to the property owner for a price not less than the current market value. The key points of the report, if I may, the property is on the corner of Marine Parade and Barks Avenue Lakes Entrance. At attachment 1 there is a diagram or a map of the property and some boundaries. Part of the road reserve, which is located on Barks Avenue, was fenced into the property prior to the current owners purchasing the property. The owners of the property have approached council to purchase part of the road reserve that is currently fenced into their property, which is identified as B in your map, plus an additional area of the road reserve. The additional area requested will bring the property boundary in line with other properties on Barks Avenue. Council have prepared a design plan for the reconstruction of the intersection of Barks Avenue and Marine Parade. It's been determined by council officers that the road reserve is not required for the redesign of that intersection. So this proposed sale will bring the road reserve boundary back into alignment, whereas it currently has a localised widening at the property, which is no longer required. So the land will be sold at a price not less than current market valuation, and the land will also be required to be combined into the owner's property to form a larger parcel of land under one title. I present a number of recommendations to council tonight. With me today is Manager Governance, who is able to field any of the technical questions you may have. I present the report to you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Cannizzaro. Councillors, are there any questions of officers? Councillor White.
I was just wanting to inquire, at what stage would we actually be told what the price will be? You're only suggesting at market value, but who will determine that?
Thank you, Councillor White. Once we get a resolution, then we'll seek a market valuation.
Any further questions, councillors? No, otherwise there is a recommendation in front of you on page 260 of the notes. Do I have a motion, please? Councillor Allen.
Yes, excuse me. I'll move that we accept the officer's recommendations.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor White. Thank you. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Allen?
Only to say that it's always intrigued me why that block was out of line with everything else in the street, and it would be nice to bring everything into uniformity.
Yep, terrific. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor White? No. Is the motion opposed? No. Would anyone else like to speak for or against the motion? No. I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. The motion is carried unanimously. Now, item 5.3.2 is the customer experience strategy, and I'll hand over to Mr Cannizzaro once again, the General Manager of Business Excellence.
Thank you, Mayor and councillors. Again, before you is a report titled Customer Experience Strategy, which provides details of the customer experience strategy and an action plan, and we're seeking adoption of the customer experience strategy. So the key points of the report for council to consider are that following a review of the organisation in 2019, we embarked on the development of a customer experience strategy to support a customer-focused delivery and cultural change. The customer experience strategy is aimed at ensuring we focus on our customer outcomes at the beginning of a task, process or project, that we consider customer needs when we develop options and select a preferred option based on balanced analysis of business, operational and customer requirements. The initial action plan focuses on developing some fundamental tools to capture and analyse data, review current services with the customer experience front of mind, and to identify communication strategies and improve accountability. Once these procedures are in place, we will have a valuable set of data to develop and improve our services and our customer experience. The action plan is developed to be implemented over a 2-year period. The strategy and action plan will be reviewed in concert with the community satisfaction survey, so we're always in step with that, just so we can incorporate feedback that we receive from that survey and update our customer experience strategy as appropriate. The report is presenting 2 recommendations to council. I also have with me tonight online Nola Brody, Manager Customer Experience and Communication, who has, with her team, prepared the report and will be happy to field any questions of a technical nature. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Cannizzaro, and welcome, Ms Brady. Councillors, are there any questions? Yes, Councillor Greason.
Thank you very much, Mayor. This is complicated in that quite a lot of the survey and study was undertaken during 2020 when we were in lockdown and under COVID restrictions, and I suspect there's not a lot of evidence nationally or internationally about the impact of this on the way people are thinking and their sense about their future and their outlook on life for the next 20, 30, 40 years. But it does worry me a little bit that if we base our future work on this, that it might in fact not be what people are thinking next year. Can you comment on that?
Certainly, thank you for the question, Councillor Grecian. What I can say is this customer experience strategy was actually based on survey and data and community engagement from prior to COVID, so 2019 and 2020. This had commenced before COVID began. I do absolutely appreciate that the way people have been thinking in the past 12 months will be influenced by current environment. I think the action plan has been designed to put some basic and fundamental operational processes in place to collect data and seek further feedback from the community. So our intention is to do this in conjunction with the council plan and the engagement cycles that will go with that. We can update the action plan earlier than 2 years if we find that the information we're receiving from the community varies significantly from what we've already gathered.
Thank you. Are there any further questions, councillors? Councillor Reeves.
Thanks, Mayor. Nola, I just wonder if you can help me. There's some data represented on my report on page 284. It's and it's an untitled page. Maybe it's attachment. No, it's an untitled page, but 284. And it refers to in-person, phone, email, writing, website and Facebook contacts. I'm just intrigued that there are 973,110 in-person contacts. How do we do that? Is that every time someone goes to the pool or a bathroom? Or it just seems an extraordinary number compared to the phone contacts and so on. It just seems disproportionate.
Yes, thank you for the question, Councillor Reeves. And yes, so it does include not necessarily bathroom contacts, but it certainly does pick up the number of times we do count traffic walking through council service centres, whether that be library services or council services. It also includes all of our other council facilities, and it includes our waste facilities as well. So services where people interact with council in person.
Thanks, Nola. That's really extraordinary and it's really telling. So no wonder our carpet wears out.
Okay. Nola, you had a question, Councillor Buckley?
Yes, look, I just have the question in regards to the section that talks about our people. And I'm wondering, there's a section there about improved customer service skills in people of all departments. Does that mean that you do, you focus on specific departments, such as the, say, enforcement agency of the arm of the council? Do you do in-depth analysis of how those departments are going, and do we get data back on I guess, or information in regards to what's found and what remedies are put in place in regards to if there's any issues that come to light, I suppose?
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. I am assuming you're referring to page 299 of the council paper, the blue table.
Hang on, 290.
290.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just wanting to go to the same page as yourself. Okay, so, yep, on page 2, on page 290, what we have picked up there those are specific comments that have been made by people in the community about what they're looking for us to improve in terms of customer experience.
Right.
So people told us that they wanted us to improve customer service skills in people of all departments. They felt that that was lacking. If I refer you then down to page 299 of the document, your pack, your council paper, there is a table that references the actions we've identified that we feel will help improve accountability, which includes implementing clear specific items within KPIs of staff to make sure everyone's aware that customer service and customer experience is part of everyone's role, regardless of whether you're customer facing. We will also look at service level agreements between interdepartment service level agreements to provide information internally to get back to customers, but also with customers as well. And that'll happen through our customer service charter and our complaints management review that we're undertaking. So there are steps we're taking to address the concerns raised by the community that's reflected on page 290.
Thank you for that explanation, Nola.
Thank you, Nola. Nola, I just had a couple of questions. One, and I think Mr Cannizaro mentioned this, but I must have been thinking, or my mind was somewhere else. Could you just remind me, please, about what initiated this new strategy to be developed, please?
Thank you, Mayor. With respect to the initiation, I guess there are a couple of triggers. One is directly involving the organisational restructure and how services have been aligned in that structure and what that means to the customer experience. So that was a major trigger. I think in terms of our industry, it's very clear that government industries have understood that they need to change customer experience and focus more extensively on it with regard to how they provide services by putting the customer at front of mind rather than just driving operational services. So I think it's definitely an industry movement at the moment, and a lot of councils are moving in that direction. And I think in addition to that, it's also been progressive feedback from the community over the previous years to suggest that they would like us to make that a significant factor in what we do moving forward in our frameworks.
Yep, great. And when will we see reporting back to Council, Nola, and how often will that be, please?
So as various elements of the action plan are implemented and we collect data, our expectation is to be providing operational reporting through to the business units, specifically to do with particularly complaints management and customer response times. And then following that, we would expect we would be providing reporting to Councillor in briefing sessions, potentially on a quarterly basis, in line with our quarterly reporting on our operational action plans.
Great. All right. Thank you very much. Councillor Greason, you have a further question?
Yes, I do, and I realise I should have asked this when we looked at this document previously, but it occurs to me looking at it again tonight that I wonder, knowing that many of the Aboriginal community are not particularly comfortable about approaching mainstream and non-Aboriginal organisations, whether you were able to identify whether they were appropriate or proportionally represented in their contacts with the Shire and their responses, and whether they would have actually provided information to you about what they wanted to see. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grecian, for the question. What I will say is I think what the customer experience strategy has in it at the moment is some actions for us to improve how we collect data, how we analyse it, and how we engage with the community. It's fair to say that I don't think we have a thorough understanding of exactly all the demographics and the markets of the data we have collected over the past years to inform this. I think that actually is one of the things we've identified as something we need to be able to do better. We need to understand the demographic of our area and how we need to engage with them, and also how we then analyse that data and are able to explain to people what we've collected, from whom and how. So I think this will go a step forward to improving that.
Thank you, Nola. That's good to hear.
Thank you. Any further questions, councillors? Thank you, Councillor Reeves.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Nola, my question's actually to the CEO, and it's regarding the table that you brought to our attention, 6.1, and around position descriptions, accountability and key selection criteria, performance measures added to work plans and the like. And I guess my question is, so there's an ambitious target to get all that in there by June this year, CEO, and we would expect, I guess, perhaps some staff opinion data and role clarity and so on to also reflect those outcomes as well, because and I think that's exciting. So I'm wondering about even just a quick word or two about the process, and about there must be consultative committees and other arrangements that are on board with this as well within the organisation.
Through you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor, for the question. So there's a few things we have in place, and certainly happy for General Manager to step in if I miss any. But we regularly undertake performance reviews, or an annual review and then a 6-monthly check with staff. So at that review, we look at what's in the position description. So there's an opportunity there to update. So that's already a process in place. We are currently in the process of updating the values within the organisation, and looking to refresh those, and we're engaging with all levels of the organisation in terms of understanding what it is that we want to achieve from our people in terms of that customer interface. And I would probably like to say as well, just to add to what Nola said, in terms of the initial review that I did when I arrived, it was really about identifying that customer centricity was something that we really needed to focus on. And so all these actions, not just the people actions in 6.1, but all the actions actually work towards that. So there are some things, and that's why we're able to have those dates in there and get these things done pretty quick, because there's some structures already in place that we can move through pretty quickly and make that happening. We also have what's called ELMO. I don't know quite what it stands for, and it's not the little red cuddly bear. It's actually our online learning program. So we're able to also roll out electronic training through that process as well. And we do that for a whole range of things: sexual harassment, OH&S, there's a whole heap of them that go out through there. So there's a lot of mechanisms we have in place that can already do that as well. So that's why we're able to put some of those dates in there fairly quickly and get on with it.
Thanks, CEO. I think it's really important for us to understand the level of operational change that these sort of strategies have. So congratulations. I look forward to seeing those in operation.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. If there are no further questions, there is a recommendation in front of you. Councillors, could I have a motion? Do I have a motion? Councillor Greason, thank you. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Buckley. Would you like to speak for the motion, Councillor Greason?
I think this is a good process. It's a very important process, and I would like to see it extended and expanded in the way that we've discussed tonight. Thank you, Nola.
Thank you. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Buckley?
I agree with Jane.
Thank you. Is the motion opposed? Would anyone else like to speak for the motion? I would, just briefly. I think this is, I think it's fantastic, and I'd like to congratulate the CEO and the senior staff and Nola for the work that you've done here. I think we all, as councillors, we all know how important customer service is, and we probably don't know how challenging it is, especially when you look at the numbers of people who, who are serviced by all the different facilities and services that council offers. So congratulations on the work, Nola, and I really look forward to seeing the positive results. Terrific. I'd like to put that motion to the vote now. All those in favour? Thank you. The motion is carried unanimously. Mr. CEO, yes.
Mayor, if I may, could I ask if we could take a short adjournment? I have a matter that I need to discuss with the council before we proceed.
Certainly. Thank you. Do we need a motion to move into?
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Stowe. Councillor Allen, you'd like to second it. Is the motion opposed? No. All those in favour? Thank you.
Thank you.
The motion is carried unanimously. I would like to hand over to the CEO to explain an issue which has arisen in the procedure of our meeting and what we're going to, how we're going to proceed.
Mayor, point of order, please.
Would you like to state your point of order, Councillor Reeves?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor and councillors. I believe that in the voting on items 5.1.2 and 5.1.3, there was an incorrect counting of the votes due to councillors who abstained from voting. And I wonder if we can just defer to the CEO for an explanation of that, and maybe we might need to revisit those items, councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. Mr. CEO, thank you.
Sorry, Mayor, I just wonder, normally you would uphold my point, I think, just procedurally.
I will uphold your point, Councillor Reeves. I think it's quite a good one, and thank you for raising it. Mr. CEO.
Through you, Mayor, and Councillor Reeves, you are correct. In the Local Government Act 2020, under section 61, 5E, there is a description of what happens when a councillor who is present does not vote. And effectively what that clause says is that if a councillor present doesn't vote, it is taken to have voted, the councillor is taken to have voted against the question. So I think we need to revisit items 5.1.2, 5.1.3 on the agenda. I apologise for the mistake, and I would ask, Mayor, that we consider both of those items again. And I would just say to councillors, you are not held by how you voted previously. This is a fresh and new vote, and that is entirely up to you how you vote for those items on this occasion. Thank you, Mayor.
Could I just ask, so we start with the motion which is on the table, is that correct? And that motion has been moved and seconded?
No, we would need to move and second the motion. We literally need to start from the start again, in a sense. So we need a mover and a seconder, and then go through the voting process.
Okay, thank you. So regarding item 5.1.2, this is the amendment to the East Gippsland Planning Scheme Stockman Base Metals Project correction to the incorporated document. Councillors, you have a recommendation in front of you. Do I have a motion, please? Thank you, Councillor Reeves. Do I have a seconder? Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Greason. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Reeves?
Thanks, Mayor. I think, as I spoke last time, this is a procedural matter that is regarding a legal agreement to do with the maintenance of a road if this proposed mine proceeds. It's as simple as that. It is regarding the wording around a legal matter, councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. Councillor Greason, would you like to speak to the motion?
As a purely technical point, that's not going to change the situation overall. I support the change.
Thank you, Councillor Greason. Would any councillor like to speak against the motion? Councillor Buckley.
As stated before, I believe that this is more a statement about supporting the community's views around this plan generally, and that there is a very important part of this plan which is about water security, and it's about our agricultural sector, and I believe that we shouldn't make any moves forward on this plan at all in regards to roads, etc., until that is addressed and put before council. So I speak against the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. Would any other councillor like to speak for the motion? Would any other councillor like to speak against the motion? If not, I put the motion to the vote.
Point of order, Mayor, sorry.
Yes.
Just a little right of reply there.
Oh, sorry.
Yep.
Yes,
So,
Councillor Reeves.
look, councillors, I think water security is really important There's no doubt about it, and we appreciate that. But this isn't actually having a discussion about water security, and I believe that we will have a further report in future around this matter that we'll be able to make some substantive decisions about. So don't conflate the issues. Just need to move on this matter to allow the officers to proceed.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. I'm now going to put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? 4. All those against? 4. Sorry, is that 4? No. Okay. Can I?
An abstainer. Yeah, which is
A no. Is that clear, or shall I ask
Sorry,
for
point
hands
of order,
again?
Mayor. I don't think that was clear, the actual intentions of the councillors there
Okay.
in voting. I think it's important, this matter, that their voting intentions are made clear and taken seriously.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. I will ask for another indication of the vote. So all those in favour of the motion? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Thank you. And those against? 1, 2, 3, with 1 abstaining, so 4 against. Thank you, councillors. I'll now move on to the second of the... the matter is carried, yes, 5-4. I'll move on to item 5.1.3, which is the motion to support international campaign to abolish nuclear weapons, Cities Appeal 2021. Councillors, do I have a motion?
Yes, I'm happy to move the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Crook. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Greason. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Crook?
Certainly, briefly. Well, more or less what I said about 10 minutes ago. But I'd just implore those councillors who didn't support this motion to please reconsider. This is a matter of no material effect on yourselves, but one of unbelievable magnitude to a huge proportion of the world outside of our comfortable lives.
Thank you, Councillor Crook. Councillor Greason, would you like to speak to the motion?
I really don't have anything to add. It's a very important issue that we support.
Thank you, Councillor Greason. Would anybody like to speak against the motion? Councillor Allen.
Yeah, I believe that this isn't in our remit. It's a federal issue and of no consequence to the Shire as far as influencing things. And yeah, I vote against it.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak for the motion? Thank you, Councillor Reeves.
Yeah, thanks, councillors. And yeah, you're quite right. It doesn't have any material value, and you may think that, as I said earlier, rates, roads, rubbish are our remit. But sometimes it's good to actually show a bit of your core moral values and your moral integrity, and put that on the line, because that helps our community understand who we are and what we hold dear, and especially young people. I think young people don't like nuclear weapons, so I really implore, and older people. In fact, as I said earlier, nobody has stopped me in the street and said what we need is a really good ICBM in East Gippsland.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. Would anyone like to speak against the motion? Councillor Stowe, thank you.
Nobody stopped me in the street either and said that they want them. Nobody discusses it that I know of. Very few people seem to discuss it, but that's irrelevant. We need to send a message to the council and to other people that we're not going to be bothered talking about issues that we have no influence over. Let's stick to the things that we do have an influence over, and we've got a lot of them. Let's do them.
Thank you, Councillor Stowe. Anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? Councillor Buckley.
I'm an absolute conscientious objector to war in all forms, and I have no qualms in stating that. But, and this is a big but, we have 4 years here together that we have very important issues to deal with on a local level that we must focus on, and the world issues that we cannot have an effect on regardless of making moral gestations is not a good use of our time in these council chambers. We must focus on what we are doing in our local area. I do not support nuclear weapons in any form, but what I do support is our council being focused on local council issues, and I think we need to set a precedent.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. I also wish to speak in support of the motion. I think this is a clear issue. Occasionally, as the Mayor, it's not infrequent that some request comes to me regarding a cause, which might be a national cause or an international cause, and just replying to my fellow councillors who think that we should be focused on local issues, I think this doesn't take very much of our time. Like, I don't think anything was displaced from the agenda so that we could discuss this item tonight. I think we can actually do more than one thing at a time, and I'm passionate that we support this issue. It's a letter to the Prime Minister. People might argue that it won't make any difference, but I think if we said that about anything, nothing would change. It needs one person at a time. So thank you. Councillor Crook, I'm going to offer you the right of reply, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I quite often hear from our community out in rural East Gippsland that those buggers in the city, they're making all these decisions that influence our lives, and well, we never get a say. They make them on our behalf and they never talk to us. If we never talk to those decision makers, how do we expect our wants, needs, desires to ever be represented by them? This is a fantastic opportunity for this Shire to represent our community to our federal leader who represents us at an international level, to say that we do not believe nuclear weapons are something the world wants or needs. And I implore you councillors to please vote in favour of this motion so that we can write to our Prime Minister and represent East Gippsland on the global stage on this important issue.
Thank you, Councillor Crook. I'm now going to put that motion to the vote. All those in favour? 4. And against? 4. And Councillor Buckley is abstaining, so she is a no. So the motion fails, is lost. Thank you, councillors. I'll now move on to item 6 on the agenda, and that's urgent and other business. Mr. CEO, do we have any urgent and other business, please?
Thanks, Mayor. Yes, I believe Councillor Buckley has an item of urgent business that she wishes to table.
Thank you. Councillor Buckley.
Look, in accordance with the section 3.37 of the governance rules, I request that an unscheduled meeting be called under urgent business to discuss the budget implications in regards to the Inquiry Advisory Committee panel hearing regarding the Fingerboards Mineral Sands project, to be held on Tuesday the 9th of February 2021 at the Bensdale Corporate Centre at 6 p.m.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. I would like you just to outline, please, why you would like this council to consider this urgently.
Yes, because it pertains to a fiscal burden that the council will incur, that we need to have some robust discussion about how we proceed further, and it needs to be done prior to the panel hearing, which is in mid-February. So it is an urgent matter that we should take to the round table and take to a special meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. Does Councillor Buckley's proposal have a seconder, please? Councillor Allen, thank you. Councillor Buckley, would you like to speak to the fact that you want this accepted as an item of urgent business?
Look, I just would like to say to my fellow councillors that I accept that we've made a decision based on the knowledge that we had at the time, and I think that we need to revisit the decision process that we make, and I really think, out of respect to each other, that we have this meeting so that we can discuss what options are available in regards to the representation of the council in an important matter that the community is divided upon. So we need to represent all of our constituents, and we need to make sure that we're taking care of our fiscal obligations to the rate payers who pay us tax, and that needs to be discussed.
Thank you. Councillor Allen, would you like to speak to the proposal?
Yeah, I think that as a council we need to get a rein on what costs are likely to be incurred as a result of the motion that we passed on the 1st of December, or whenever it was, 15th, was it? So...
It was the 1st.
1st of December. I think this is escalating a little bit out of control cost-wise.
Councillor Allen, I just want to interrupt for a sec. So we're just speaking at the moment about why this should be considered as urgent business.
Yeah,
okay?
and this is why we must do it, because if we leave it till the next council meeting, it's after the fact. It must be addressed as a matter of urgency now.
Thank you. Would any councillor like to speak against the proposal, the motion? Councillor Crook, thank you.
While I appreciate that the fiscal or financial implications of our decision made December 1st are substantial, I don't believe that there is any conceivable alternatives at this stage in the process. We are 10 days out from the start of the hearings process, and it will be... I can't conceive of a way that we can minimise the cost to our... I believe we already are minimising...
Councillor Crook, sorry, I'm just going to interrupt for a sec. So we're just speaking at the moment about why this should be considered urgently as an item of urgent business.
Okay, I don't believe this is an item of urgent business because I don't believe any discussions will lead to any kind of resolution.
Thank you. Councillors, does anybody else wish to speak in favour of the motion? Does anyone else wish to speak against the motion? Councillor Reeves.
Yeah, thanks, councillors. The only thing that's urgent at the moment is to support the process that's undertaking. And this is a dangerous and threatening thing to do, to stop the process that we've been charged with as a councillor group by the community.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. Does anyone else wish to speak either for or against the motion?
I have a right of reply.
You do. Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Buckley. Would you like to have that right of reply now?
Yeah, look, I take on board what Councillor Reeves has said, but we have a duty of care, and there has been some discussion about options that needs further a magnifying glass and further looking at that we should take into account. I don't believe that we are suggesting stopping the proceedings at all. That is not what the motion is in regards to. So I think let's be fair and be honest about what's being put on the table and at least have a chance to do that, and then a decision could be made when more information is available.
Okay, I'm now going to put that motion to the vote. All those in favour? 5 people. All those against? 4 people. The motion is carried. Councillor Buckley, would you now like to speak to your motion?
Excuse me, Madam Mayor.
Yes.
I know I'm not involved in the debate or in the discussion, but for consistency, I've always declared a conflict of interest whenever we discuss anything to do with this particular proposal, as my partner formerly worked or consulted to the proponent. So I'll continue with that and declare a perception of conflict of interest and remove myself from the chambers.
Thank you, Ms Weigel.
Just for some clarification, I'll finish speaking to the motion. This is more of a budget matter, and so I want to make that clear, even though it is in regards to to legal costs. So we need to make that distinction. And I just want to thank the councillors who have supported me today, and hope that the other councillors, when we come back to the table, will come back with a positive input into finding some sort of resolution and finding some middle ground. So thank you.
Councillor Buckley, have we heard... no. Oh, sorry, I'm just going to ask for some clarification because I'm getting a little bit unclear here. Councillor Buckley, would you like to read your motion?
For the one that will be for the special meeting? Oh, okay. Well, that... just to ask Bojane, did I have the third... oh, again? Oh, okay. Look, I apologise.
Sorry, point of order, Mayor.
Councillor Reeves.
This matter, in previous times, Councillor Van Diggle has declared a conflict of interest on these matters, and given that this hasn't been enough forewarning being provided to the councillor, I wonder if that there are implications around that, or if her circumstances have changed.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves.
No,
I'm just going to ask for some clarification myself, Councillor Van Diggle.
Through you, Mayor.
Thank you.
As per the legislation and the requirements under the code, a councillor is required to determine if they have a conflict of interest. If they believe they have a conflict and leave the chamber, then they need to declare that they do not need to. My understanding is they do not need to otherwise justify staying in the chamber. Is that correct?
Sorry, again, Mayor, my point. So my point was that the councillor, because this matter hadn't been raised earlier, the councillor couldn't have been able to determine whether she had a conflict of interest because the information hadn't been provided prior. And therefore I wonder if the vote is therefore a valid vote.
Madam Mayor, may I just reiterate?
Sorry, Councillor.
Point of order, because Bojane did speak.
Councillor Buckley, there is a point.
I have a point that I'm waiting for the Mayor to determine.
Okay, right.
So I'm just asking you to pause for a minute. Councillor Reeves, are you expecting? No. So, Councillor Reeves, I uphold your point of order, and I will invite Councillor Van Diggle to speak on that matter.
Sure. I have seek clarification regarding this matter. So I did think about stepping out for this decision, but I think this is no longer a decision about CalBar as such, and it's more to do with a substantial amount of the budget that will have to come from somewhere. And to me, it sits a bit uncomfortably in my soul, knowing how much money is probably being spent towards this that potentially is representing a portion of the community and not all. So I did seek clarification regarding this question, and in terms of, because it's now about finances, I can stay, but I'm happy to have the conversation with councillors after this as well. Yes, it's not my job to say, yeah.
I feel like we might need a suspension of standing orders if we want to continue this discussion. Councillor Greason, do you have a question about the meeting procedure, or do you have a point of order? You've raised your hand.
I really can't answer that question except just, I think Kirsten's point is this is about finances. And in that context, it could be about bridges, roads, and everything else we've discussed today, where $1 million is, or $500,000 or $250,000 is what we discuss all the time. So I think this is about...
Sorry, I'm going to interrupt Councillor Greason. I'm sorry, because I don't think that we're entering into a debate here at the moment, and I just want to make sure that we've dealt with the issue of conflict of interest. And once again, I'm going to ask advice from the CEO. So the councillor decides.
It would be...
Councillor decides whether they have a conflict, and we've heard that Councillor Vanderbilt doesn't feel she has a conflict.
Through you, Mayor, that would be my interpretation of it, that the councillor has been asked and has provided rationales to why she doesn't believe she has a conflict of interest, and it is up to the individual councillor to do that, or another member of council or the community to take exception to that and then take whatever action they feel appropriate. But we've had a clear answer now, so I believe we can move on.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. So to resume, Councillor Buckley, I would like you to read your motion, please. Yes, I think you've read it already, but would you please read it again, because we need to now debate that and vote on it.
I thought that procedure had already taken place.
No, we've decided that your motion can be admitted as a
can
urgent.
be admitted. Okay,
that's right.
Sorry, I didn't understand the procedure.
Not many of us do at this point, Councillor Buckley, but we're trying.
Let's sally forth. In accordance with section 3.37 of the governance rules, I request that an unscheduled meeting be called under urgent business to discuss the budget implications in regards to the Advisory Committee panel hearing regarding the Fingerboards Mineral Sands project, to be held on Tuesday the 9th February 2021 at the Bairnsdale Corporate Centre at 6 p.m.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. Is that motion seconded? Thank you, Councillor Allen. Councillor Buckley, would you like to speak to your motion now?
Just that, as I've reiterated before, we need to thrash this out to ensure that we're confident that we are representing the best way forward to spend our ratepayers' money.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. Councillor Allen, would you like to speak to the motion?
As the motion says, it's a budgetary thing, and the effect that it's going to have on our budget, and I think that that's vital to the operation of this council that we consider it.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Is the motion opposed? Councillor Crook.
Yes, so look, as previously stated, I understand that the concern is a financial one, but I don't believe that any discussions that we can have at this late stage in the proceedings will actually have any significant material bearing on the process unless we curtail our representation at the IAC hearing, which I think could substantially change the outcome and our capacity to represent our communities, which in my case I was elected to do.
Thank you, Councillor Crook. Does anybody wish to speak for the motion? Anybody wish to speak against the motion? Councillor Reeves.
Yeah, thanks, councillors. This isn't just about finances, this is about representation at the IAC for the proposed Kelbar mine. It's not about finances, it's about how we spend the money to actually represent the community's views. There's two ways this could go. The Minister could approve it or refuse it. And our input at that table is absolutely critical. If you come to this meeting next week and put a gag on the support of the council to have representation at that IAC, it will be disastrous for council, irrespective of the outcome of Minister Wynn's decision, because that's who's going to make the decision. If the minister approves the mine, which could happen, then we want to be at the table to make sure that we have the best representation and get the best social, environmental and economic outcomes for our community. And we can't do that if you put a block on supporting this. If we have an impact on the decision to refuse the mine, then it will be because we have been at the table. But if you stop us having a voice at that table, which is what is effectively being proposed, because we're so far down the track, and the last council gifted you and us an SLR report that you have accepted, that we have read, that raised significant concerns about the proposal, that you made a decision on, and now to stop this without carrying it forward is extraordinary. And it's the wrong thing to do. Irrespective of your view on the mine, we are down this track now and we need to be there at that table on behalf of the community, whichever way the community feels about this. You have to be there. Councillors, don't let this happen. Let the officers move forward. Let them continue their amazing work that they have already started. They've engaged the right people. The work on this is extraordinary. It's a 10,000-page EES. You can't have half-baked representation there. We need to have the right representation.
I'm just going to pause again, and sorry for having to do this. I want to just be clear that the motion we are voting on is about having a meeting next week.
Yes.
So any decision that we're making now is not going to be a final one about funding the legal representation at the IAC. Okay, I just wanted to make that clear before we go forward. So would anyone else like to speak in support of that motion?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Would anyone else like to speak in support of the motion? Would anyone else like to speak against the motion? Thank you, Councillor Greason.
Keeping in mind what you've just said, Mayor, I don't support the motion. I don't want anything to interrupt the speed with which those staff are working, the officers here are working, and their commitment to it. I think it is vitally important that they continue, and they continue with our full support at the pace at which they're operating, and without having to review and find and look for ways of saving pennies. This is critically important that we are represented as well as possible, and I take the officers' advice on board and think that that we have to run with them. So I don't support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Greason. Would anyone else like to speak in support of the motion or against the motion? If not, you have the right of reply, Councillor Buckley.
Okay, so let me make it very clear, and I thank Councillor Reeves and Grecian for their very emotional, heartfelt speeches, but this is not about not supporting our staff. This is not about supporting our position on the EES at the advisory panel. What this is about is ensuring that we don't blow out the amount of money that we are spending on the process, which, to be quite frank, when this motion was put forward to me on the 1st of December, it was put before me 1 hour prior to having to vote on it. I was not properly informed about the fiscal expense that this would incur, and I believe that it has become quite substantial now. And I know that the previous council, when they commissioned the EES statement, the inquiry, that they had no idea that this would be part of the process and the expenses that were incurred with it. So I think we need to do our due diligence to our community and ensure that we discuss how we move forward on this matter. And regardless of whether it it changes its trajectory or not. At least I have done my due diligence to point out that we have a fiscal duty and also an environmental duty to ensure that we are doing the right thing. But it was pointed out to me very early in my position that we had to find $1.5 million to make up for our budget from the rate cap from the previous council. We are already trying to find money, and now we're spending a great deal more, it seems, than that, potentially, on something that I wasn't informed about as a councillor prior to me making, and whether people could say, well, you should have asked the questions. And maybe they're right, but as my first council meeting, I wasn't aware of the processes, so I apologise to my community that I didn't ask the questions at that point when the motion was made in the first instance. Now I'm just trying to remedy that and give the councillors an opportunity to take a few days to think about this, come back and find out if there are some options in regards to how we move forward. And I think that that's a reasonable request. I'm not against what we're doing, I'm just saying that we need to take a look at it and get the best options available to ensure that we're doing it the right way. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. I'm now going to put that motion to the vote. All those in favour? 4 in favour. All those against? 4 against, and Councillor Van Diggle is abstaining, so she is also against. So therefore the motion...
Can I just say something quickly? I know this is not...
No.
No, you can't.
Okay. The motion is
you failed.
Has lost.
It's lost. Okay.
Okay, councillors. Councillors, we now have 2 items to consider in confidential business. Items at item 7.
Mayor, would you like me to move that we close the meeting to the public according to the provisions of section 66(2) of the Local Government Act?
Thank you.
Those following items.
I think that's a really good idea. Thank you, Councillor Reeves. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Greeson. Is the motion opposed? No. I put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Yes. In favour? Thank you. The motion is carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. I'm now going to formally close the meeting. It's 9 o'clock exactly. So I thank you for your attention and thank you also to councillor staff. Good night.